Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Question to the
We're
audience.
supposed to do Narayana.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that.
Narayanam
Narayanam
namaskrityam
namaskrityam
naram
naram
chaiva
chaiva
narottamam
narottamam
devim
devim
saraswati
saraswati
vyasam
vyasam
tato
tato
jayam
jayam
udire
udire
nasta
nasta
prayeshu
prayeshu
bhakteshu
bhakteshu
nityam
nityam
bhagavata
bhagavata
sevaya
sevaya
bhaktanam
bhagavati
bhagavatote
bhagavatote
bhaktir
bhaktir bhavati
bhavati. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering in service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, whose praise with transcendental songs is established as irrevocable fact.
So question is, who can summarize what had happened in the chapter what we are reading now?
So far.
So far. Yes, please.
Vidura came back from his pilgrimage to counsel Dhritarashtra to leave the palace of Yudhisthira because he was dying and because he was living in a way that was attached to material life. And so Vidura came back and in his compassion was like, hey, you're like coughing up mucus and you're living with Bhima, like you gotta go.
Yeah.
And Dhritarashtra made the choice to leave, and then after leaving Yudhisthira, had a little bit of heart soreness, as well as did Sanjaya, and then Narada Muni came and kind of counseled them away from that, telling them that was also material attachment and that separation is a myth.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I won't add anything. Narada Muni said, just to elaborate on Narada's counsel so far, this really perfect answer. Thank you, Presence. Narada Muni preached to him to not lament for anyone, as everyone is under the protection of the Supreme Lord. And he said that he should look to the Supreme Lord Krishna, who has descended to the world. So that brings us to today's verses, where Narada gives his prophecy. And the texts are 51 to 53. So we're going to read through the translations first. Would anyone like to read?
His brother Vidura and his wife Gandhari have gone to the southern side of the Himalaya mountains, where there are shelters of the great sages.
The place is called Saptasrota, divided by 7, because there were waters of the sacred Ganges were divided into 7 branches. This was done for the satisfaction of the 7 great rishis.
On the banks at Saptasrota, Drastira is now engaged in being in Ashtanga Yoga by bathing 3 times daily in the morning, noon, and evening, by performing the Angi Horta sacrifice with fire, and by drinking only water. This helps one control the mind and the senses and frees one completely from thoughts of familiar affection.
Actually, from the future verses, we will find out that Vidura actually went with them, and he's so merciful that he accompanied them and rendered service by providing his guidance along the way. And just summarize what we read is Dhritarashtra, he engaged himself in the process of Ashtanga Yoga by fasting only on water, fasting 3 times a day, performing Agnihotra of fire sacrifice. And why he's doing that? To control the mind and senses and focus his mind and free his mind of familiar affections.
So the following verses, which we are going to let the next speaker describe, but they will be very, very beautiful as it's going to describe how Dhritarashtra turns towards God through this austerity and quits his body and returns to the spiritual sky. So now we're going to chant the verse and read the verse in purport for verse 53 and focus on that.
Snatvanusvananam tasmin
Snatvanusavanam tasmin
Utvachagni yatha vidhi
Udvachagninatavadi
Abhaksha upashantatma
Abhaksha upashantatma
Saaste vigataishana
Saaste vigataishana
Snatvanusavanam tasmin
Snatvanushavanam tasmin
Utvachagni yatha vidhi
Udvachagninatavadi
Abhaksha upashantatma
Abhaksha upashantatma
Saaste vigataishana.
Saaste vigataishana Snatvanushavanam tasmin Udvachagninatavadi
Abhaksha upashantatma
Saaste vigataishana
Snavanam tasmin Utvachagni yatha vidhi Atatman upashantatma Saaste vigataishana Snatvanam suvanam tasmin Utvachagni yatha vidhi Abhaksha upashantatma Saaste vigataishana.
You can do the word for word together. Snatva, by taking bath, Anushavanam, regularly 3 times, morning, noon, and evening. Tasmin, in that Ganges divided into 7. Utva, by performing the Agnihotra sacrifice. Cha, also, Agni, in the fire. Yatha vidhi, just according to the tenets of the scripture. Abhaksha, fasting by drinking only water. Upashanta, completely controlled. Atma, the gross senses in the subtle mind. Saha, Dhritarashtra. Aste, would be situated. Vigata, devoid of. Eshana, thought of relation with family welfare. Someone like to read the translation and purport? Oh, okay. On the banks of Sapta Sora, Dhritarashtra is now engaged in beginning Ashtanga Yoga by bathing 3 times daily, in the morning, noon, and evening, by performing the Agnihotra sacrifice with fire, and by drinking only water. This helps one control the mind and the senses and frees one completely from thoughts of familiar affection. Okay, this is your service.
The yoga system is a mechanical way to control the senses and the mind and divert them from matter to spirit. The preliminary processes are the sitting posture, meditation, spiritual thoughts, manipulation of air passing within the body, and gradual situation in trance, facing the absolute person, Paramatma. Such mechanical ways of rising to the spiritual platform prescribe some regulative principles of taking bath daily 3 times, fasting as far as possible, sitting and concentrating the mind on spiritual matters, and thus gradually becoming free from vyasa, or material objectives. Material existence means to be absorbed in the material objective, which is simply illusory. House, country, family, society, children, property, and business are some of the material coverings of the spirit, Atma, and the yoga system helps one to become free from all these illusory thoughts and gradually turn towards the absolute person, Paramatma. By material association and education, we learn simply to concentrate on flimsy things, but yoga is the process of forgetting them altogether. Modern so-called yogis and yoga systems manifest some magical feats, and ignorant persons are attracted by false things, or they accept the yoga system as a cheap healing process for diseases of the gross body. But factually, the yoga system is the process of learning to forget what we have acquired throughout the struggle for existence. Dhritarashtra was all along engaged in improving family affairs by raising the standard of living for his sons, or by usurping the property of the Pandavas for the sake of his own sons. These are common affairs for a man grossly materialistic without knowledge of the spiritual force. He does not see how this can drag one from heaven to hell. By the grace of his younger brother Vidura, Dhritarashtra was enlightened and could see his grossly illusory engagements, and by such enlightenment he was able to leave home for spiritual realization. Sri Narada Dev was just foretelling the way of his spiritual progress in a place which was sanctified by the flow of the celestial Ganges. Drinking water only, without solid food, is also considered fasting. This is necessary for advancement of spiritual knowledge. A foolish man wants to be a cheap yogi without observing the regulative principles. A man who has no control over the tongue at first can hardly become a yogi. Yogi and bogi are 2 opposite terms. The bogi, or the merry man who eats and drinks, cannot be a yogi, for a yogi is never allowed to eat and drink unrestrictedly. We may note with profit how Dhritarashtra began his yoga system by drinking water only and sitting calmly in a place with a spiritual atmosphere, deeply absorbed in the thoughts of the Lord, Hari, the personality of Godhead.
Om Jnana-timirandasya Niranjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
So firstly, I want to say how this is the mercy of a pure devotee, that they are so compassionate that they want to help others at the most important time of life, which is death. Vidura, he not only spoke to Dhritarashtra to enlighten him and encourage him to leave home. He could have left it at that. He could have been like, this is what you need to do, go do it, Haribol, right? Like, I'm gonna carry on with my life. But he was so compassionate that he not only went with Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, but he stayed with them to encourage them through their austerities and leaving the body. So why is death the most important time of life? Because it is at that moment, which is determined by what we do throughout our life, that our actions and thoughts determine our next destination. Whether material, our next destination and our next life, whether that's a material life or eternal spiritual life. And a pure devotee wants to help everyone go back home, back to Godhead, to be with Krishna, because love for Krishna manifests in the world as compassion for all living beings. So Vidura, he did not exclude Dhritarashtra from this, even because of all of his horrible deeds, right? This person was really did so many horrible deeds, but he still preached to him and gave him a chance to perfect his life. I was just listening to a lecture of Radhanath Swami this morning speaking about the mercy of Lord Nityananda and how Nityananda, we also read the quote from Prabhupada this morning about Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya, how they did not exclude. And in the lecture, it was actually saying that if someone is puffed up thinking that they have a lot of spiritual knowledge, then they're not open to receive the mercy. So actually, I wanted to share one little story about Bhakti Tirtha Swami and Radhanath Swami. And Vaita just got excited. So when Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he got the diagnosis of cancer, and then when it came time for him to leave his body, he called Radhanath Swami and said, I want you to come and I want you to be here when I die. And Radhanath Swami, it was, I believe, the summertime. And, Swamis have a very packed schedule in the summertime. Let's just put it that way. It's called Swami season, actually, because all the Swamis come to America. Swammer? Swami season, Swammer. So, so he had a really packed schedule, and he was thinking, he's going to leave his body in a couple of days. So he dropped everything. He was actually in New Vrindavan, and he just got in the car to drive to Gitanagari, where Bhakti Tirtha Swami was. And then actually all the other devotees who were at New Vrindavan got in cars behind him. And he was like, there's a caravan. Everybody's just following him to Gitanagari. And he was thinking he was going to be there, just a few days. But then Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he didn't die. So it ended up being a few months. And Radha Swami stayed with him the entire time. And every day they would, read together and have intimate talks about our Lord Krishna and all of his associates. And he was there with him at the time he left his body. And that just shows how devotees, they prioritize people over projects. And they prioritize the principles of community. And they prioritize being there for someone at the time of need, and also being there for someone at the greatest time of need, which is the time of death. I also want to speak a little bit about the yoga process that Dhritarashtra performed. And I was thinking think of a little slogan you could say to yourself, like Chaitanya Charan does, that we don't want to be mystic yogis, but the practice of bhakti yoga is mystical. So you get it? We don't want to be mystic yogis or have the yoga cities, but we shouldn't forget that the practice of bhakti yoga is mystical and it's not mundane. So by the mercy of the pure devotee Vidura, Dhritarashtra could see how he was entangled, and he began to practice yoga for spiritual realization. So in material consciousness, we are absorbed in the external material things: house, country, family, business, body, beauty, wealth, whatever it is. And Prabhupada is saying in the purport that these are the coverings of the spirit. These are the coverings of the soul. And the yoga system aims to help a person become free of these illusory thoughts and turn towards God. Prabhupada makes the point that yoga is not just about getting healthy or being flexible, which a lot of people these days think it is. This is perfect that we're reading this before next week. We're starting a Wednesday yoga program at the campus. Please give all of your blessings to the beautiful team, Nate, Jackson. So people think it's that, but Prabhupada says, you know, God realization isn't cheap. And yoga isn't just a cheap practice. You know, you can't, you can't just basically be absorbed and entangled in the material world and just enjoying your senses and thinking that you're practicing yoga. I actually remember, because I was a yogi before I became a devotee, but I remember at my yoga studio, which the thing is, I want to say that the founders of this yoga studio are actually great devotees and very involved with the Krishna consciousness movement, and they're actually devotees of Krishna, and they're very wonderful, and they really introduced bhakti there. So they're my first gurus, and I pay my obeisances to them. But I noticed that some of the students, like, they would come to a yoga class on Friday after work, and then they'd be like, let's go out partying. And I remember thinking, like, that doesn't make sense. Those two things don't go together. There must be a path that is more serious. So yoga is actually the process of forgetting what is unimportant and realizing what is important. The preliminary processes of yoga, which are mentioned here, like the asanas, which are sitting postures, meditation, spiritual thoughts, manipulation of air passing through the body, etc., is a mechanical way to control the mind and senses and divert them from matter to spirit and gradually be situated in trance, facing the absolute person, Paramatma, Krishna in our heart. Most mystic yogis, they're approaching Paramatma. So sometimes we read these passages and we feel, oh, you know, this is speaking about the mystic yogis, but this is not for the devotees. You know, this is not for the devotees. I can't apply any of these principles in my practice of bhakti yoga. But actually, these principles 100% apply to devotional service. Doesn't mean we have to do the asanas, but I want to share with you all how these principles do apply to devotional service in our japa and in our practice. It is important that when we are doing our sadhana, our japa, our kirtan, our hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, we should actually be withdrawing our senses from the external and fixing and absorbing our mind in Krishna. When doing kirtan and when doing deity worship, that means that we're fixing our mind and our prayer on the deity and the holy name. When hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, that means that we're absorbing our consciousness in hearing. When chanting our japa and we sit down, and of course, you know, Prabhupada, he did say, you know, we can walk when chanting our japa, but also that he would say, sit properly. You know that japa tape where Prabhupada's chanting and then he's like, sit properly? He did explain that the best is to sit down, close your eyes, and sit properly. Of course, then like later on, it's like you need to walk, your body hurts, or you're falling asleep. That's also good. But that we should actually be, sit down, close our eyes, and focus on our heart. And it means that we absorb ourselves in the sound vibration of the holy name, that we focus on our beloved Lord, whatever deity or image of Krishna that we have in the heart, and that we intensely pray to our Lord, O Radha, O Krishna, please engage me in your service. And of course, there's so many books written by Sachinanda Swami or Burijan Prabhu about how to chant nice japa. But this is what should be happening in our japa, that we're thinking, it's in the japa affirmations that we say, I will think less about my body and more about Krishna, right? So that's actually, this is the yogic process. This is the bhakti yoga process. And then gradually everything will be revealed through the japa, through the practice, Krishna's name, form, and pastimes. And eventually how we will enter into those pastimes to serve the Lord. There is an internal world and an eternal world that is the true reality. And this external world is real, but it's temporary. We have to be bhakti yogis and cry and cry and cry. And if we can't cry, cry to cry. And if we can't cry, Jayapataka Maharaj says this, and if we can't cry to cry, cry to cry to cry, to enter the eternal reality. And then if we do that, when we open our eyes, we can engage with the external material world. And it's not a problem. It's not a hindrance to our Krishna consciousness. We see this is Krishna's energy to be used for Krishna's service, right? Prabhupada always gives the example of the microphone. Is it material or spiritual? Well, it depends on how we use it. If we use it for material things, it's material. Or if we use it for spiritual knowledge, then it's spiritual. But if we do not gradually connect through practice with that eternal reality, we can actually be easily captivated by the external material and think, oh, this is the real thing, or oh, that billboard is very nice, and be upset when it does not go our way.
Thank you, Champak. Another point was here in this purport. Prabhupada describes how it's important to follow regulative principles. And Dhritarashtra, he was fasting just on water. And fasting is necessary. Sometimes we do that, not too much. And actually, to be a yogi, Prabhupada says we have to control the tongue. And as we know, and Rupa Goswami describes in Nectar of Instruction, that a sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak the mind demands the actions of anger and the urges of the tongue. Belly and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. And in purport to this verse, Prabhupada describes, as for urges of the tongue, we all experience that the tongue wants to eat palatable dishes. Generally, we should not allow the tongue to eat according to its choice, but should control the tongue by supplying prasada. The devotee's attitude is that he will eat only when Krishna gives him prasada. That is the way to control the urge of the tongue. One should take prasada at scheduled times and should not eat in restaurants or sweetmeat shops simply to satisfy the whims of the tongue or belly. If you stick to the principle of taking only prasada, the urges of belly and tongue can be controlled. When one may observe that these three senses are physically situated actually in one line in our body, straight line, as far as the body is concerned, and that the bodily demands begin with the tongue. If one can restrain the demands of the tongue by limiting its activities to be eating of prasada, the urges of the belly and the genitals can automatically be controlled. The fact is, if we accept prasada, we actually be protected and saved from Maya's influence. Vegetables, grains, fruits, milk products, and water are proper food to offer to the Lord, as what Krishna himself describes. It's such a simple process. It's available everywhere and anywhere in the world. And actually, it goes to 4 seasons. So you can always get, even in the winter, you can get water. You can get leaves, you can get fruits, you can get flowers in different seasons. So any season, even if you're up in the north or down in the south, you can always find, or you're in the winter, summer, or spring or fall, you can always find something to offer to the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught us to avoid very palatable dishes, even while eating prasada. If you offer palatable dishes to the deity, with the intention of eating such nice food, we are involved in trying to satisfy the demands of the tongue. That person who runs here and there seeking to gratify his palate and who is always attached to the desires of his stomach and genitals is unable to attain Krishna. My dear friends, don't worry. I intend to enjoy prasadam. So please enjoy prasadam as much as we can, 100%, 108% guarantee. And we will remain healthy and we will be happy. But the point is, so gradually we have to become to the point of honoring prasadam. It's not only food, but it's something very sacred. It's Krishna's mercy, ultimately. That's what it means. And as we prepare the prasadam, we're supposed to meditate how we want to please Krishna and not ourselves. Like, difference is that we are going to all of us going to the grocery store, Publix, just next door. And usually, at least I can say about myself, before Krishna consciousness, you just go and grab whatever you like, and then you put it in your mouth and enjoy. But in Krishna consciousness, we go into the store and we see what Krishna would like, what we can offer to Krishna. Is it offerable to Krishna? Is it will be pleasing to him? Then we offer it with love and devotion, and then praying to Krishna and thanking him for this opportunity of giving us this wonderful prasadam, we accept it.
Oh, the next point is like a story, kind of my story.
You can say, this is her story.
Because if he would have said, like, one time my friend at Bhakti Center, I'm like, oh, that's actually my friend, but he's your friend too. But
Yes.
He told me this story before I knew you. So one time my friend at Bhakti Center, Krunini Mai, you know him, Maya, he shared with me, this was years ago, we were leading a community group together. He shared me that he realized that the more he's like meditating on food and enjoying food, like even if it's prasadam, the less enthusiastic he is in Krishna consciousness. And the more, the less he meditates on food and the more he meditates on Krishna and service, the more enthusiastic he is in his service. And I remember that kind of touched my heart in a very beautiful way because I have the same experience. And again, Gopal is saying, Prabhupada is saying, like, we don't have to fast on water, we don't have to eat leaves. We can enjoy prasadam and we can eat prasadam as much as we want, for our health. But that the meditation should be that I'm taking this prasadam to honor Krishna's mercy and to be able to serve him with full enthusiasm. So I also have this experience, like when I'm meditating on like my senses and enjoying, then it's like, I feel like my bhakti is like going down. But if I'm just really meditating on Krishna, and even like when you go to feed the deity, I'd always think, well, if I'm hungry, Krishna must be more hungry. And then you're like really praying like, wow, Krishna, like, please, you enjoy. Krishna, he's independent. He doesn't need our service. He doesn't need our food. He has all the food. And in Jagannath Puri alone, they offer like so many offerings a day. But he chooses to accept our love. So if we offer it mechanically, where's the love? Where is the love? But if we offer it with love, then he is happy.
Another point in purport that Prabhupada mentions, there's
sorry.
Bhogi and there's Yogi. And actually Prabhupada describes there's 3 types of people. There's Rogi, means one who just suffers and cannot enjoy. It happens. And there's Bhogi, one who really tries to enjoy, but we would like to be a yogi, those who are transcendentalists.
But yeah, actually, I just want to say though, Carmen, this one's for you. If we are meditating on what to cook for Krishna and what to cook for the devotees, then that meditation is very, very good and increases our enthusiasm, and we should meditate more and more and more and more. Isn't it? Don't you find that when you're like, what am I going to cook this week for the Tuesday program? And you just are like super ecstatic. If anyone thinks Carmen is super ecstatic, say Haribol. I think Carmen is super ecstatic. Yeah, so that and then Krishna, there was one other thing I was going to say. Yes, you want to say something? Yes.
Champak described about how to really be fixed in Krishna consciousness, we actually have to take shelter of a spiritual energy, actually take shelter of the Lord. That's the difference between bhakti yogi and normal yogi, those who meditate on Paramatma or impersonal Brahman. Because unless you become fixed at the lotus feet of Krishna, the service of the Lord, which is bhakti yoga, actually these yogis, they come down to material existence because they want varieties. So even may achieve liberation, but then Prabhupada describes then somehow or other they become so transcendental, and then they just engage themselves in all kinds of welfare activities and become very active in this world, just doing something mundane. Versus bhakti yogis that try to engage everything is possible in Krishna's service and really be fixed in pleasing Krishna, and that actually beyond liberation.
Yeah, and one time I asked one of my Shiksha gurus, Giri Govardhan Prabhu, I asked him, so in the Bhagavad Gita, it's not like all of the chapters, the verses are about bhakti yoga. It gradually progresses. You've heard about the yoga ladder, right? But then, of course, Prabhupada says, just take the elevator and go directly for bhakti yoga. So even though Prabhupada, he explains everything according to bhakti yoga in the purport. So Prabhupada gives us bhakti yoga from the beginning. I asked him, so why is that stuff necessary? And his answer was so cool. He said, because when we're practicing bhakti yoga, then we're also naturally, through the practice of bhakti yoga, developing those other positive traits. Not like the details of wrapping ourselves in tree bark and going to the forest, but the principles of tolerating happiness and distress, and you know what I mean? You know what I mean? So we can actually do a little self-check when we read the Bhagavad Gita. Are we tolerating these good qualities? When we practice Krishna consciousness, automatically the good qualities develop, but we should still practice the good qualities as well in our practice of Krishna consciousness. And the last thing that I'll say, and then we'll open it up for discussions, questions, comments, and chastisements, but corrections. But Shruti's got some up his sleeve for us. But actually, Radha Swami, he says, and this is in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya, it wrote in the Shikshastakam, Trinadapi Sunitana, Torodapi Sahishtrana, Amanina Manadena, Kirtaniya Satahari, that in order to chant the holy name of the Lord constantly, we have to be striving to be more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, willing to offer respect to others and not receive respect ourselves. And we should string this verse across this as pearls across the necklace, the string of the holy name, and wear it around our necks always. Jai Shri Kori Tariki, Shri Shri Prabhupada ki, Nrsimhadev Bhagavan ki, Prahlad Maharaj ki. So actually, really, this is actually where it starts. Through our chanting and our hearing and the 5 angas of bhakti, the 9 processes of devotional service, but we have to do all of it in this mood of Trinadapi Sunichena in order to please the Lord. So this verse should just be in our heart always. Hare Krishna.
Any questions, comments, please?
Yes, Maya, and then present. Hare Krishna.
As we were talking about the essence of these things and how we need to be hold on to the essence and pay less attention necessarily to us having to wrap ourselves in bark, or not
right
specifically. But I was thinking,
please don't come to Mangalarti and tree bark.
I was thinking of the 6 pillars of bhakti, and I was writing them down because I'm really trying to memorize them. And as I was writing them down, you started chanting from the Shikshastakam. And the 6 pillars are from like some of my teachers from Wisdom of the Sages,
Yeah.
and it's based off of the Sri Shikshastakam. So I thought that was sort of like a nice alignment that as I was writing those down, you started chanting like
Wow.
and also I just wanted to share that because I feel like that's a really, for me, the 6 pillars has been really helpful for me to be like, okay, let me go back to the beginning. And if I base my day on these 6 pillars, then it helps me in my service so much more. It helps me to be more tolerant, less offensive, theoretically, hopefully, and all those things. Yeah. So thank you for class.
Thank you. Do you
Thank
want to
you.
tell everyone what the 6 pillars are?
Oh yeah, sure. Okay. I just wrote them down. So great. 1, I do not criticize. I am tolerant. I take no offense and ask for forgiveness. I'm quick to apologize. I see the good in others and let them know it. I am grateful and keep a tally of my blessings. And I just want to say also being here, even though it's only been a week already, I feel these things from you guys. So I'm so grateful to be here and to have all your association.
Krishna has ki jai. Presents.
So this is something that I've been wondering about for some time. So in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a purport that talks about how when you're offering prasadam to the Lord, you are asking him to accept such a humble offering, enable one to advance steadily in life, to purify the body, and to create fine brain tissues, which will lead to clear thinking. And my curiosity is like, there is material science that shows that certain things like isolated sugars, for example, they actually don't purify the body, right? They actually lead to all sorts of, or like too much salt, like things like that. Like there are things that material science have discovered about certain kinds of foods that actually don't do these things for the body, or like certain things cause foggy thinking. And so my question is, and I've been wondering for some time, like when we offer it to Krishna and then that becomes this like purified food, how does that work? Like, does it transcend those? Does it transcend the material science, or are we still subject to the laws of what material science has discovered about some of those foods? Because I know Krishna loves sugar, but I also know that sugar leads to diabetes. So yeah, I've just been sort of curious about for that sometimes. So any insights you have would be welcome.
It's a tough question. Thank you, presents. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we have Gopal.
Gopal's gonna answer it.
Well, yeah, fresh sugar cane juice.
What?
Fresh sugar cane juice has more nutritional value than refined white sugar. Refined white sugar is not so good, but fresh sugar cane juice is better. And, it's all moderation too. I mean, carbohydrates cause diabetes also. So you have to do everything. Plus, if you go on the internet and look at, you'll realize every single strain of rice has arsenic in it. It's naturally occurring thing, chemical. But we're not meant to live in this world forever. We're vegetarians because Krishna is a vegetarian. We offer our food to him. And the sages have recommended, fruits, grains, sugar, the green. So that's what we take. Does that help at all?
A little bit. I'm not fully satisfied, but
I can add something if Gopal allows. Prabhupada emphasized very much from 60s, and New Vrindavan community was established back then, and then there was many other farm communities like Gita Nagari. Also, Prabhupada established that. It's understood, and more coming up. And there's Govardhan Eco Village, one of the best projects in the world. There's farm projects all over Europe. Prabhupada wanted that from 60s, and 50 years, 70 years almost passed. And still, we're kind of not yet there, to be honest. But the principle is that we should offer the best possible to Krishna. And what we find in the shop, it's sometimes like far away from what is the best. And things what you mentioned, they're harmful for what we get from the store. But if you grow it organically, organic vegetables, protected milk from the cows, which are happy, which is completely different substance. Like once we're going to be in visit some eco farms, so please try some prasada milk offered from the protected cows and see those cows, how they're well treated, how they're fat and healthy. And sugar substance is honey, nicely grown, like with ethically grown honey and natural products. And ultimately, we problem with modern lifestyle, people are completely unregulated. They don't take food at certain times of the day. They take it like whenever and whenever. And on top of all that, this harm which is there is also irregularity, which is quite a big harm. And then eating too much so many times, and also inattentive eating. I actually wanted to mention that about prasadam, that when we honor prasadam, usually we don't mix, like we have a meeting and we have our prasadam. So usually we keep meeting as a meeting. We have prasadam as prasadam. We honor prasadam, we actually focus on prasadam. If we like scrolling our Instagram and trying to honor Krishna prasadam, we actually don't do one or another. And when we're taking prasadam, we have devotees and we can have light discussions. And it should be something like joyful and pleasing, not something like very hard and always let us discuss worldviews and this happening, that happening. Prasadam is actually a joyful festival, and we take it in that positive, uplifting spirit. And also, by practicing Krishna consciousness, we do feast, we do eat sometimes a lot, but many times we like try to regulate our eating, so we're not eating like sumptuously huge feast in the evening, which is, however healthy it could be quite harmful if you eat really like till an egg. So we should be careful with seeing that even best food possible, like unprocessed sugar, best ingredients offered to Krishna, but if you overeat it, like it will be harmful for our body. Still, the purifying effect will be there. But answering to your question, how it works, you offer best to Krishna, which is grown organically by the devotees, and it will have spiritual benefit on top also, and benefits for the health. Is that answering your question?
Not completely, but I learned a lot. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Do I have your permission to add
please.
something?
Yes, please.
Okay. See, you also have to distinguish between being nourished spiritually and nourished materially. And you also have to take into consideration the faith and advancement of the person taking the prasadam. So for us, and we shouldn't imitate pure devotees. No one in this room, like we should not imitate. Because for us, we do need to distinguish what foods are healthy for our body and what foods are not. So Prabhupada said, Krishna likes milk, we should offer him milk, but also most of the milk these days isn't so pure, right? So we should offer Krishna what he likes, but also we should also offer Krishna foods that are healthy so that we can serve him nicely. Like even when I was in Ujjain, there was a devotee who was like every day taking the Mahaprasada, and then he was getting sick, and his guru Bhakti Charumarj was like, you can't do that, just take a little bit of the Maha, and everybody can take a little of the Maha and then, eat properly. There's someone like Prabhupada, his sister Pishima, there was a whole pastime of she was cooking for him like, really heavy foods. And when Prabhupada was sick, the devotees were telling her, don't cook those things for Prabhupada, don't cook those things for Prabhupada, it's giving him indigestion. And she was like, I'm going to cook for those things for him. You don't know who he is. He could eat rocks and digest them because, he's such a pure devotee. And then there's Raghunath Das Goswami, who he was living at Govardhan, offering thousands and thousands of obeisances every day. He was at Radhakund, and he was only, has anyone heard this story? At first he was begging alms, and then he was thinking, no, this isn't pleasing. So then he was just waiting for people to come to him, and then he was thinking, no, this isn't pleasing. So then eventually he took the leftover maha from the Jagannath temple that had then been eaten by the cows, and then it took that leftover and like peeled off the inside of the rice and was eating that. And Lord Chaitanya came to him and was like, I want some of the prasadam that you're eating. And he was like, no, my lord, no, my lord. And he was like, the Raghunath Das Goswami is feasting on the best prasadam and he is keeping it from me. Because on a spiritual level, the bhav that Raghunath Das Goswami had was so high, you know? And then when he was at Radhakund, he was only taking a little palmful of buttermilk every day. But one day he was very sick. So his followers said, bring a doctor. And the doctor came and they were like, Raghunath Das Goswami is sick because he's been eating too much sweets. And they're like, what are you talking about? He only has a palmful of buttermilk. But actually Raghunath Das Goswami in his spiritual identity had been serving sweet rice to the divine couple Radha and Krishna in his meditation, in his spiritual body, and then he took too much of the remnants. So his spiritual meditation was causing him material indigestion. So it's like a very deep subject matter, but the principle is we should honor prasadam, but then we, see, material science doesn't apply to someone who's completely transcendental, but we are, at least maybe not all of you, but at least I am still very much on the material platform. So I have to make material considerations. Does that help? You want to add something? Did I say something bad?
It just made me think of something. I was thinking of Prahlad Maharaj and even in contemporary times, Mirabai. So Prahlad Maharaj was given, I believe, some food or milk or something that was poisoned by his father. And then same was with Mirabai. She was her family was so upset with her being Hare Krishna, they just gave her poisoned milk. And so both of them, they got it and they were like, I'm gonna offer this to Krishna. I mean, they didn't know poison, whatever. It's like, oh, it's boga, gotta offer it. So they offered it, and of course, when they honored it as prasada, nothing happened to them. It just made me think of those two great devotees. But yeah, it just makes me think like we want to try our best to give Krishna the best we can, and really Krishna sees our intentions. So whatever we can do, we should offer it to Krishna to the best of our capacity. And that's going to be different for different people in different settings. Yeah. And yeah, we try our best to see everything as we try our best to see it as prasadam and not just something that we're feeding our body, you know, when it's lunchtime, I'm so hungry, I'm just going to eat the salad dressing. Of course, I mean, Krishna was that? Chaga, yeah. But of course, people make it matwan that way also. But the highest level is like we see, yeah, this is Krishna's mercy. And there was one more point, now I forget. But yeah, but those two devotees, how they offered everything with pure heart and it didn't affect them materially.
Two things. Today's the disappearance day of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji.
Wow.
That's it. Yeah, I looked it up too. And Sri Rasika. Just throwing that out there. Also, it's prasadam outside. Yeah. And thank you so much for your class today. Yeah, I have a question. I don't know if we have time, so maybe I'll ask you later.
I can sit with you.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, it's this struggle for existence.
I can sit with you.
Gratharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
for those who don't know, Srila Jagannath Das Babaji is the far right. He is the spiritual master of Bhakti Vinod Thakur.
Keep saying that. How many people